Heading into last weekend's matchup with the Houston Texans, Ryan Tannehill had thrown 8 interceptions through the first 10 weeks, and after only throwing 7 interceptions in 2019 and 8 interceptions in 2020, it seemed statistically like Tannehill was regressing to an extent. And I think it's fair to say that there was some mild concern about Tannehill among the Titans fan base, but after throwing 4 more interceptions against an abysmal Texans defense, the mild concerns have evolved into legitimate worry about whether Tannehill has the ability to elevate Tennessee's offense to the extent necessary without Derrick Henry and without any high-end receivers for the time being. Like most statistics, interception numbers can be pretty misleading because a lot of interceptions aren't the quarterback's fault, and a lot of passes could easily be turnovers if the defender had better hands. So instead of just scouting the box score, we're going to dive into the film and evaluate Tannehill's processing, decision-making, and accuracy, and figure out whether he's playing poorly or his surrounding core just isn't helping him. The final product will be a number that I'm calling adjusted interceptions, which will determine the responsibility of the play a lot more accurately. To start, I've separated all of Ryan Tannehill's interceptions into one of 4 categories, which I've named red, orange, yellow, and green. Red is for especially bad interceptions that starting caliber NFL quarterbacks should just not make, and these throws will count as 1.5 adjusted interceptions. Orange is a standard interception that's obviously not a good play, definitely the quarterback's fault, but not really egregious, and these throws will count as 1 interception. Yellow is for throws where the quarterback deserves partial blame, but there's extenuating circumstances that keep me from weighting it as heavily as others, and these throws will count as 0.5 adjusted interceptions. And then we've got green, which is for throws where the quarterback deserves absolutely no blame, and these will count as 0. I've also watched all of Ryan Tannehill's throws and included turnover-worthy throws where the DB dropped an interception that he could have caught, or the interception got called back because of a soft roughing the passer call, and I've graded these throws by the same standard. We're going to go chronologically, starting with the third play of the Cardinals game. It's 3rd and 10, Arizona's in cover 3 cloud, and Tennessee's sending Chester Rogers on a deep curl right into the soft spot of the zone coverage. Fitting a deep curl into the seam versus cover 3 is a pretty elementary quarterback 101 type of throw. It's just about looking off the underneath defenders and throwing with anticipation. But the area where Tannehill struggled most often this year has been staring down his receivers. Once the ball is snapped, his eyes lock onto the right side of the field and never leave. Instead of surveying the field and widening out the middle hook defender, Tannehill stares down the route the entire way through, and Arizona's defense hovers around that area. But despite all of that, Tennessee probably could have hit on this play if he would have thrown with more anticipation. Anytime you've got routes like this where the receiver's sitting down in between 2 defenders in zone coverage, the ball needs to leave the quarterback's hands before the receiver gets to his spot, because once he cuts his route off, these 2 DBs that are bracketing him are going to compress to close that window. And then because Tennessee's in a 3-by-1 formation and Arizona's in cloud coverage to the passing strength, there's a giant window for Tannehill to hit Julio on the backside dig, but he never looks in his direction. I'm going orange on this play, so this will count as a 1 for Ryan Tannehill. These first 2 plays serve as a great example of why interception numbers can be so misleading. This shows up as an interception on Tannehill's box score, but in reality, it was a perfect throw through a tight window on 3rd and 5 that bounced off his receiver and got picked off, so this play is going to be green. Moving on to the home matchup against Indy, Tannehill threw 2 picks in this one, but I'm going green on both of them. The first one is a perfectly accurate pass that ricocheted off Chester Rogers, pretty clearly not Tannehill's fault at all. Although I will be critical of the read here. It's 3rd and 9 and you've got a wide open out route that would easily move the chains, but Tannehill doesn't see it and he throws short of the sticks. This next interception is super ugly. It's 3rd and 8. Chester Rogers is going to sit down in this zone opening here, but Tannehill just isn't looking for him. There are 5 routes on this play, 2 of which go past the sticks, and Tannehill only ever looks at the 3 underneath routes that wouldn't have converted anyways. So Tannehill is 100% at fault here, but not from the standpoint of the interception. So Tannehill's trying to hit Julio on this pivot route. He decides not to throw it and moves onto his check down, but Jeremy McNichols and Tommy Hudson are running the same route to the same spot. Clearly one of these guys is running the wrong route, but whoever was supposed to run this check down is targeting this spot right here, and right when Tannehill throws it, both of his receivers just run away from the ball. Just an amazingly disgusting play from everyone involved, but in terms of the interception, not Tannehill's fault. I'm giving this throw against Jacksonville an orange. Tennessee's running play action boot, and Josh Allen crashes to the rollout, and Tannehill does a nice job evading the sack, but he can't set his feet for the throw. This play is Tannehill's first red of the season, and it's just an inexplicably bad read. Buffalo's in cover 3, and they don't do a single thing to hide it, and I do really like the play design from Todd Downing here. Tennessee's layering 2 separate passing concepts to attack man coverage or zone coverage. Underneath they're running mesh, which is just 2 shallow crossers, and over the top they're running crease, which is a post from the Z and a dig from the X. So if Buffalo's in man, Tannehill hits the mesh, and if they're in zone, he hits the crease. So good job from Tannehill on the initial read here. Pre-snap, you've got single high, so it's looking like cover 1 or cover 3, but Tre'Davious White's lined up on Jeff Swaim, which is a pretty clear zone coverage indicator. Tannehill gets the snap, checks Trey White's drop to make sure that he's not in man coverage. Now he knows it's cover 3, so he's going to target the crease concept over the top. Everything up to this point is perfectly fine, but what makes this interception so head-scratching is that you're almost never supposed to throw this post route against cover 3. Closed middle coverages are basically designed to take away the post route, first of all, but also the post isn't even the primary read on this concept. The post route is just supposed to occupy the deep safety and flush him out of the play, and now you've got a dig route against a corner with outside leverage and no help over the middle. So yeah, gotta go red on this play, just no clue what Tannehill was thinking here. I went back and forth between giving this one orange or yellow, but I went with orange. It's not the worst interception in the world. You've got this linebacker rushing the passer and then dropping off into coverage, and Tannehill doesn't see him. Obviously not a good play, but that's just the kind of stuff that happens when you have bad pass protection. I went super in-depth on the protection rules for this play on Patreon, so I'm not going to rehash all of that, but to put it simply, the Colts are showing 7-man pressure. Tennessee's half sliding to the left, so if this player blitzes, he will be unaccounted for. That's understood by everyone on the offense, at least it should be. So Tannehill knows that if this player rushes, he's got about 1 second to throw the hot route. The problem is that there is no hot route on this play. When you line up with a numbers disadvantage in pass protection, the expectation has to be that the defense is going to have a free rusher and the QB is going to have to get rid of the ball quickly. If you've already got underneath routes built into the play, then you don't need hot routes or side adjusts necessarily, but there's nothing underneath for Tannehill to hit, which means Firkser needs to watch this defender as he starts his route, and if that player rushes, Firkser needs to cut off this deep curl and give Tannehill an outlet. Tannehill gets the snap, looks left, sees that there's going to be a free rusher, and he immediately looks over to Firkser, who is not cutting his route short. At this point, you've just got to throw the ball at his feet. There's no scenario where Tannehill would have time to wait for Firkser's route to develop. This one isn't entirely on Tannehill, but he's responsible enough to get an orange. This next interception is one of the better defensive plays I've seen all year. The Colts are in cover 5, also known as 2-man, where you've got 2 deep safeties and for the most part man coverage across the board, except this backside apex defender will take any in-breaking route from the strong side if his man doesn't immediately release. Tennessee's running double digs, which would be great against vanilla 2-man because this first dig clears out the traffic over the middle, and then you've got single coverage on the second dig. But the Colts play this perfectly. Darius Leonard abandons Jeff Swaim. The coverage rules probably say that he shouldn't have, but he either saw something on film or just made an instinctive play. And then Kenny Moore passes off the inside dig with perfect timing to make the interception. Tannehill's still going to get a yellow, but ultimately this is just an example of great defense winning out. Next interception is from the Rams game, and Jalen Ramsey is just such a good cornerback that if he's playing with outside leverage, I'm just not targeting him on a deep out no matter what. The main issue is, again, Tannehill just stares down AJ's entire route, but what makes this an orange instead of a red is that if Bobby Hart wasn't the worst NFL player of all time, this probably wouldn't have been an interception. Hart gets beat immediately, and Tannehill doesn't have room to step into this throw, and he has to short arm it as well so that he doesn't break his hand on A'Shawn Robinson's helmet. Next interception was actually called back due to roughing the passer, but I'm going to give Tannehill an orange for this one. Got to point out the fact that Aaron Brewer is running 10-yard out routes for us, so that's a good sign. But Tennessee's running flood, which is their most used passing concept by far, and this deep out to Marcus Johnson is just not open, especially with a safety like Marcus Williams covering it. Tannehill should have hit AJ for what should have been a touchdown. Now we've arrived at the Houston game, and unfortunately there are a ton of plays to discuss, so I'm going to go over the plays that were actually intercepted first, and then we'll look at a few others. So the first interception, again, comes back to bad eyes. Houston's in a double mug look, but they're dropping both linebackers and playing cover 3, and the Titans are running double slants, which is a really effective cover 3 beater because there's only 4 underneath defenders, and you can pretty much just read off the linebackers. But again, Tannehill just never takes his eyes off of AJ Brown, so he's not doing anything to manipulate the coverage, and he gives Zach Cunningham the easiest interception of his life. This one is a red. It's honestly the type of play I would expect from Logan Woodside if he came into the game. There's plenty of blame to go around for this interception. Dez Fitzpatrick runs a really bad route against Desmond King, who is not a very good outside man coverage corner. Even if the throw was accurate, Dez wasn't able to create any separation at all. And then Quessenberry, Brewer, and Ben Jones do a pathetic job picking up this ET stunt, so Tannehill isn't able to finish his throwing motion, and he ends up doing the vintage Carson Wentz underthrow. So I'm giving this one a yellow because the route was bad, the protection was bad, but Tannehill still needs to do a better job resetting his feet and maintaining a platform to follow through with his throwing motion. This play requires a little bit of guessing to really analyze. It's possible that Dez Fitzpatrick has an option route here and that Tannehill was expecting him to be running a dig. And I'm not really trying to hate on Dez, but his separation ability is just so underwhelming that even if he was running the correct route, I doubt he would have gotten open anyways. It's also possible that Dez was running the correct route, but I kind of doubt it because digs are usually the standard routes on the backside of passing concepts, especially considering none of these front side routes are attacking the middle of the field. I just can't imagine designing a play like this with a deep curl on the backside. But again, Tannehill is pressured, so he throws off his back foot, and it's another play where there's a very real possibility of an unblocked rusher, but there's no outlet built into the play for Tannehill to get rid of the ball. He needs to do a better job recognizing this blitz, but if he did recognize it, the only thing that could have happened is that he takes a sack. So I'm giving this one a yellow as well. I've watched this play more times than a healthy person should, and I can't come up with a single thing Tannehill could have done here. Final interception here, Houston's in cover 6, which is quarters on one side of the field, cover 2 on the other. And again, Tennessee has a good play call for this coverage. They're running smash, which is a super common cover 2 beater with a hitch from the number 1 and a corner route from the number 2. And you're just reading the flat defender and throwing whichever route he doesn't pick up. And smash is effective against cover 2 because this deep safety isn't in any position to defend the corner route, so you're just creating a 2-on-1. To me, the main problem on this play is how bad of a route Anthony Firkser runs, and there's really 2 parts to this. First of all, Anthony Firkser is not fast enough to stress the defense vertically. If Todd Downing's going to run smash with Westbrook and Firkser, Firkser needs to be on the outside running the hitch. The second part is that Firkser runs this corner route way too flat. Just compare this route by Julio on the exact same concept and look at the space between the corner and the hitch. Firkser runs his corner route 8 yards past the hitch and Julio runs his 12 yards past. That might not seem like a huge difference, but it's enough to allow this flat defender to cover both routes simultaneously. Tannehill shouldn't have thrown this, so I'm still going orange on this one. But when I watch this play, my main takeaways are how limited Tennessee's weapons are and how Todd Downing could still be doing a lot more to put them in better positions. We've got 4 more plays from the Houston game I want to look at. So the correct read on this play is Westbrook on the curl route. Tommy Hudson stumbles right as Tannehill gets rid of the ball, so maybe he could have had a chance at this, but you're playing an undrafted rookie tight end at wide receiver. That's just not where I would be going with the football unless he was wide open. So I'm giving this an orange, bad read, and an inaccurate pass. This next one also gets an orange because you just can't be late on these zone coverage throws. When Chester Rogers turns around, the football needs to be hitting his hands. You can't afford to be a second late on your decision making here. Fourth down play, and I'm going to give this one a yellow. Really not sure what's going on here. Say what you will about Todd Downing, but I guarantee you he's not drawing up plays with two receivers running to the exact same spot. So good job by Tannehill sensing pressure and escaping the pocket, but he needs to keep his eyes downfield because he had Firkser open for the entire time that he was scrambling. And once he sees Firkser open, he hesitates before throwing the football, which, you know, your options aren't getting any better at this point. You've got to just get rid of the ball. So another bad case of indecisiveness by Tannehill. From a turnover standpoint, this pass could have easily been intercepted, but it's fourth down, so that's not really a concern. And then I'm including this last play, which I thought was an inaccurate pass when I saw it live, but it was actually tipped, so this one gets a green. To wrap things up, I want to make a few points about Tannehill's situation, outline the aspects of his game that have regressed and improved, and finish with my opinion on the outlook of Tennessee's season and Tannehill's future. So first of all, the reality is that Ryan Tannehill is getting an astonishingly low amount of help, and that reached extreme levels in the second half of the Houston game, but it's been going on all season. Aside from AJ and Julio, who haven't consistently been on the field, the only receiver who can reliably create any separation versus man coverage has been Marcus Johnson. And that's not to say that he's been some route running technician. I just mean getting open at a starting caliber level. And obviously Marcus Johnson was added to IR for the second time, so his season is over. At its core, football is about winning one-on-ones, and when you go 5 wide and lose every single one-on-one matchup, there's nothing a quarterback can really do about that. The receivers have also been dropping a ton of passes. Ryan Tannehill has had 19 of his passes dropped, which is tied for 5th among all quarterbacks. His pass protection has been really bad as well, and bad route running combined with insufficient time to throw is a terrible combination. So the situation and surrounding core is arguably the worst in the NFL, and if you're expecting Tannehill to put up close to the same stats as the previous 2 seasons, you're significantly overestimating a quarterback's ability to just generate production out of thin air. If Tannehill was on pace for anything close to the 34 touchdown, 8 interception stat line that he put up last season, he would be in the MVP race. The second thing is Ryan Tannehill's statistical regression is, in my opinion, misrepresentative of his actual performance. If you just compare 34 touchdowns and 8 interceptions last year to 13 and 12 this year, it's easy to come away with the idea that he's taken this significant step back. But I feel like this entire video has been a pretty solid argument that the box score isn't always reliable when it comes to evaluating player performance. My favorite statistics that PFF records are big time throws and turnover worthy plays, and I'll put the explanation for those on the screen, but they kind of tell you what people think touchdowns and interceptions tell you about a quarterback. For the 2021 season, Ryan Tannehill has a big time throw rate of 3.6% and a turnover worthy play rate of 3.4%. In the 2020 season, where I think everyone would agree Tannehill was a really good quarterback, his big time throw rate was 3.6% and his turnover worthy play rate was 3.9%. And we obviously can't just pretend the Texans game didn't happen, but Tannehill entered Week 11 with a turnover-worthy play rate of just 2.1%, which was 6th best in the NFL and the lowest rate of his entire career. I say all of that not to run cover for Ryan Tannehill or whatever. I just think it's important to be mindful of context when we look at statistics and recognize that they never really tell the whole story. In my opinion, Ryan Tannehill's always been kind of average as far as his ability to throw with anticipation, but it's been a lot more noticeable this season because he hasn't had nearly as many wide open players to throw to. If you go back and watch Tennessee's offense at its peak, they were constantly getting A.J. Brown and Corey Davis wide open over the middle of the field because they had Derrick Henry, a versatile group of tight ends, and 2 really good receivers. Those easy opportunities for explosive plays have been there in spurts this season, but you kind of need your playmakers on the field to have an explosive offense. Because of this, Tannehill has to improve his eye placement, which to me has been his biggest area of regression this season. With Derrick Henry out, teams are playing a lot more split safety defense against the Titans because they're less worried about having a safety down in the box to fit the run. This means that when Tennessee faces zone coverage, they're seeing more cover 2 and less cover 3, and in cover 2 you've got 5 underneath defenders as opposed to the 4 under in cover 3, so the pockets between the zones become even tighter and the quarterback's eye placement becomes even more important. But this season, Tannehill's been staring down receivers way too often and not doing enough with his eyes to manipulate coverages either. Tannehill's best trait has always been his footwork, which is why he's such an accurate quarterback, and his footwork from a clean pocket is still great, but he needs to be better about shifting his base when he's under pressure so that he can still deliver the ball accurately. So that's the main issue I've noticed from a technical standpoint. And then his decision making has been a little worse this year, but I think it's showed up more in the form of not seeing open receivers than it has disastrous reads and decision making. As for my long-term opinion on Tannehill, I'm not pressing the panic button, but the Texans game was definitely concerning. There's a good chance that this was just a one-off bad game in the rain and he gets back to his former self, but for the first time since he took over, I don't have 100% confidence in the quarterback position. That's not saying we should move on from Tannehill or anything, and he'll 100% be Tennessee's quarterback at least through next year. If Tennessee's receivers can't get healthy, I don't see them having an explosive or efficient enough offense to make a deep playoff run, but AJ and Julio theoretically should be healthy by then, and the impact of having just one of them available is huge. The Titans' ability to overcome so many injuries has been admirable, but it's getting to the point where they just can't afford to lose any more guys. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to subscribe. Also follow me on Twitter and check out my Patreon if you're interested in supporting the channel and getting access to more Titans content.